Do you dare to face the darkest night of the year? They say that during the winter solstice, the veil between the living and the dead is at its thinnest, when the forgotten rise and the cursed whisper in the cold. But can you survive hearing the truth hidden in the dark? Stay with me until the end, if you think you can handle it. The snow fell in heavy sheets, smothering the narrow paths that twisted through the forgotten village. The kind of cold that didn't just bite, but sank deep into the bones. Jonathan Hayes, ambitious historian, had come seeking the truth behind an ancient curse tied to the winter solstice. He believed it was all superstition, until now. The village was ghostly silent. No lights flickered in the windows and no signs of life stirred in the streets. It was as if the place had been frozen in time, held captive by something far older than memory. Jonathan, despite the eerie silence, pressed on toward the inn at the village's edge. The Solstice Rest, the only standing inn, loomed in the snow like a tombstone. Its wooden sign creaked in the wind. As Jonathan entered, the door groaned on rusted hinges, echoing like a warning. The warmth from the fire inside felt like a false promise. The innkeeper, Margaret, was an old woman, frail but with eyes like dark, hollow pits. She handed him a key without a word but hesitated before letting go. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "You should leave before midnight." Jonathan smirked, shaking off a warning. "I'll take my chances." Her fingers tightened around the key. They always do. He climbed the narrow staircase to his room. The floorboards creaked beneath his boots, and the dim lanterns along the hall flickered, barely holding back the dark. Inside his room, the walls felt closer than they should have been, the air too thick, the silence deafening. But sleep wouldn't come, not with the whispers. "Jonathan, come to us." He shot upright, heart pounding, staring at the dark corners of the room. But nothing was there. He lay back down, trying to convince himself it was just his imagination. Until the voice came again, closer this time. "We've been waiting." He grabbed his lantern and stormed downstairs. The inn's lobby was empty, the fire nearly dead. He called out, "Margaret." No answer. The front door was ajar, snow swirling inside. He stepped out into the bitter cold. And there, standing at the edge of the village, was a little girl. She was barefoot, dressed only in a thin white dress, her long hair tangled and wet. Jonathan approached cautiously, the snow crunching beneath his feet. "Are you lost?" he asked. The girl didn't answer. Her lips were blue, her skin pale. She raised her hand and pointed toward the forest beyond the village. "They're waiting for you," she whispered. Jonathan felt a chill unlike anything the cold had given him. He turned to see if anyone else was around, but when he turned back, the girl was gone. Only the faintest footprints in the snow remained. He hesitated, but the whispering returned, louder, more insistent. He had no choice but to follow. The ritual stones. The path led him to a clearing deep in the woods, where ancient stone pillars jutted from the earth, covered in frost and strange runes that pulsed with a dim, eerie glow. In the center of the stones, a well loomed, dark and yawning. As he approached, the whispering became voices. Many voices, chanting his name. He peered into the well, and his breath hitched. His own face stared back at him, but it wasn't his face. It was twisted, hollow, a grotesque parody of himself. "You've come home, Jonathan." Jonathan stumbled back, heart racing. "No, this isn't real." The voice from the well laughed. "You'll never leave." The ground trembled and hands, rotting, skeletal hands, emerged from the snow, clawing at him, dragging him toward the well. He fought, screaming, but the stone circle trapped him. The runes blazed, blinding him with a searing light. Margaret returns, but not alone. Just when he thought it was over, Margaret appeared at the edge of the clearing, clutching a rusted dagger. Her face was pale, her eyes empty. You should have listened. Behind her, the little girl stood, smiling now, her eyes black as coal. Jonathan's voice shook. "Why? What is this?" Margaret raised the dagger. "Every year the village offers a soul to the well. Tonight, it's yours." He struggled, panic flooding him. "Please, why me?" Her lips twisted into a cruel smile. "You came on your own." The shadows from the well stretched toward him, pulling him into the abyss. But at the last moment, Jonathan lunged forward, grabbing the dagger from Margaret's hand and plunging it into the snow, breaking the glowing runes. Not an offering, a replacement. The chanting stopped, the shadows retreated, but Jonathan was no longer in the clearing. He was back inside the inn, standing behind the front desk. He looked down at his hands. They were old, wrinkled, and shaking. Margaret was gone. He was the new innkeeper. The door creaked open, and a new traveler entered, brushing snow from his coat. He looked at Jonathan and smiled. "I'll take a room." Jonathan handed him a key, his voice hollow. "You should leave before midnight." The traveler chuckled. "I'll take my chances." Lesson: some truths are better left unknown. Curiosity may lead you to answers, but sometimes the answers trap you.
They warned us, didn't they? They said, don't disturb what you don't understand. But we didn't listen. And now, something ancient is awake. The town of Eldermoor, blanketed under a permanent veil of winter snow, was more than just a picturesque, quiet village. It was a place riddled with old whispers, stories of things long forgotten yet never truly gone. At its heart lay the legend of the Solstice stone circle, a hidden relic of an era older than memory. The legend spoke of an ancient ritual performed on the winter solstice, meant to keep a balance between the world of the living and the realm of shadows. No one knew who built the circle or why, but the elders warned, "Leave the stones alone. They hold more than you can bear." But the younger generation, like always, scoffed at the warnings. Among them were Sam, Alex, and Maya, inseparable friends and self-proclaimed seekers of the truth behind the tales. This isn't just some creepy bedtime story. Maya insisted one crisp winter evening as the three gathered around a crackling fire. The glyphs on the stones align with astronomical patterns. It's ancient engineering. We have to see it. Alex smirked. "You mean the haunted rocks?" "Please. It's probably just moss and some bad vibes." Sam, the pragmatist, adjusted his glasses. "If it's that important to you, fine. But I'm not buying into all this supernatural nonsense." And so, as the longest night of the year descended, they set out for the circle, armed with flashlights, a journal, and more bravado than sense. The path to the stone circle was treacherous. Frost-covered branches clawed at their jackets, and the biting cold grew sharper with every step. Eldermoor's deep woods, normally filled with the rustling of wildlife, were unnervingly silent tonight. As they entered the clearing, the sight before them stole their breath. The Solstice stone circle stood tall and foreboding, each monolith weathered by centuries yet eerily intact. Snow swirled around them as if repelled by an unseen barrier. "This is incredible," Maya whispered, stepping closer to the largest stone. On its surface, faintly glowing glyphs pulsed with an otherworldly light. "It's responding to the solstice," she breathed. "Or someone's running a hidden light show," Alex joked, though his voice trembled. Suddenly, a deep, resonating hum filled the air. The snow beneath their boots vibrated. "What was that?" Sam asked, his voice taut. Maya crouched by the stone, brushing away the frost to reveal a depression in its base. "A keyhole?" No, it was more intricate, something meant to connect. Her eyes darted to her bag, where an old crystal disc she had found in her grandmother's attic was tucked away. "Could it?" "Guys," she said, pulling it out. "This might be the missing piece." "Wait," Sam said, alarm flashing across his face. "We don't know what we're messing with." But curiosity burned brighter than caution. Maya placed the disc into the slot. The ground shook violently as the disc locked into place. The glitz on all the stones flared to life, casting the clearing in a cold blue glow. Alex stumbled back, his flashlight dropping from his hand. Before their eyes, the center of the circle caved inward, revealing a staircase spiraling down into the earth. "What the hell?" Alex muttered, his bravado shattered. But before they could react, the temperature plummeted. Their breath crystallized midair as an unnatural wind howled through the clearing. And then, from the stairs, a shadow began to rise, tall, featureless, and cold as death itself. Its voice was a low, echoing rasp. "Who dares awaken us on the solstice night?" The trio froze, their disbelief swallowed by a bone-deep fear. "Run," Sam yelled, grabbing Maya's arm. But the shadow moved faster, spreading outward like blackened frost. The circle's stones acted as its anchors, drawing its power from the very earth. "You have broken the seal," it hissed. "Now the balance shall be reclaimed, with your souls." As the light from Maya's phone struck the shadowed figure, its edges flickered like an old film strip, distorting and bending. The guttural growl intensified, reverberating through the clearing like a scream muffled by water. The monoliths seemed to pulse in response, their glowing glyphs now crackling with an electric energy that crawled across the surface like living veins. "Keep it on it," Sam yelled, his voice shaking. "I'm trying." Maya's hands trembled as she gripped her phone, the light faltering. The creature recoiled from the beam, its jagged form shrinking slightly, but its faceless void continued to stare at them, pulling at their senses like a black hole. That thing isn't just trapped, Maya realized, her voice barely above a whisper. It's feeding off the dark. Every second we stay here, we're giving it strength. Then we need more light, Alex shouted, fumbling for his lighter. He struck it desperately, but the flame barely lasted a moment before being snuffed out by the oppressive cold. The figure took another step forward, its form stretching unnaturally, arms lengthening as if to reach for them. The shadows cast by the monolith seemed to move with it, creeping closer like liquid night. The glyphs, Sam shouted, pointing to the glowing symbols. They're reacting to something. Maybe they can stop it. Maya hesitated, her instincts warring between flight and the pull of curiosity. Her gaze darted to the central stone, where the keyhole and the crystal disc still shimmered faintly. The glyphs closest to the disc flickered in a pattern, almost like they were waiting for a command. "What are you doing?" Alex demanded as Maya ran toward the stone. "I think this is part of the ritual," she shouted back, her breath fogging in the freezing air. If this thing was bound here, there must be a way to contain it again. The figure let out a low, resonant wail as Maya reached the central stone. The sound was unbearable, like nails scraping across the inside of her skull. Her knees buckled, and the phone slipped from her grasp, its light spilling across the snow. "Help her," Sam yelled, grabbing Alex and dragging him toward Maya. The creature surged forward, faster than before, its jagged form splitting into multiple shadowy tendrils that lashed out like whips. One struck Alex, throwing him back against a stone with a sickening thud. "Alex," Maya screamed, crawling toward the central glyph. The crystal disc was pulsing now, responding to her proximity. She placed her trembling hands over it, her fingertips grazing the glowing grooves. "Do something," Sam shouted, shielding Alex from another strike as best as he could. Maya closed her eyes, focusing on the glyphs beneath her hands. The symbols seemed to hum in her mind, a language she couldn't understand yet instinctively felt. Her fingers moved as if guided, pressing down on specific points of the carving. The circle erupted in light. The explosion of brightness was blinding, a cold silver radiance that lit up the clearing and sent the shadow creature howling in pain. The tendrils recoiled, burning away as they touched the light. The creature's form spasmed, collapsing in on itself as the glyphs on the stones glowed brighter, creating a dome of light around the trio. Maya opened her eyes, her vision blurred by the searing glow. She could see the creature's form shrinking, pulled toward the central stone as if it were being sucked back into the void it had emerged from. "It's working," she gasped. The creature's final scream shattered the silence, and with a deafening crack, the glyphs dimmed. The light faded, leaving the clearing bathed in the faint glow of the moon. The shadow was gone, and the air was still. Alex groaned, clutching his side as Sam held him up. "What the hell was that thing?" "I don't know," Maya said, her voice shaking. "But whatever it was, it's gone now." The stones sealed it again. Sam glanced at the central stone. The crystal disc was now dark, its glow extinguished. "Let's hope it stays that way." As they stumbled out of the clearing, the woods seemed to shift around them, the air growing warmer with every step. By the time they reached the edge of the forest, the first rays of dawn had broken over the horizon. Maya turned back for one last look at the woods. The circle was hidden again, shrouded by the trees and snow. But deep in her heart, she knew the danger wasn't gone, just waiting. And as the light of day overtook the night, the faint sound of whispers carried on the wind, promising that secrets buried by time never stayed silent for long. What if the darkest corners of your past could come alive and trap you in a world where your deepest fears and regrets are all too real? Ella, Dane, and Sarah thought they were simply chasing a legend, but the Solstice door led them into an unthinkable nightmare. With shadows that speak their darkest truths and reflections that reveal the guilt they've tried to bury, will they confess their sins in time to escape? Or will their own lies and betrayals be what traps them forever? Step into the unknown with them. What happens when the past catches up with you, and the only way out is to face the truth you've been running from? The night the solstice arrived was unlike any other. The air was thick, heavy with an unknown weight, as though the earth itself held its breath. The sky, a dark, infinite expanse, had a faint crimson hue, as if the stars themselves were bleeding. The residents of Eldermore had long whispered about the solstice door, a mythical passage that appeared only once a year, when the world seemed to stand still, suspended between the known and the unknown. Most dismissed it as a tale meant to keep the children inside on cold winter nights, but Ella, Dane, and Sarah were determined to prove otherwise. They had grown up hearing the stories, and tonight, the lure of the unknown was too strong to resist. There was an electric tension in the air, as if the night itself was waiting, holding its breath for something to unfold. The trio, bundled in layers against the biting cold, stepped cautiously into the woods, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The usual sounds of nocturnal life, the rustling of leaves, the chirp of crickets, the occasional hoot of an owl, were eerily absent. Instead, there was an unsettling silence, as if the very forest knew something they did not. As they approached the ancient oak, its massive trunk stretching upward like the bones of some long-forgotten beast, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. A low, rumbling sound, as if the earth itself were groaning in pain, vibrated through the soles of their boots. The wind, silent moments before, suddenly picked up, whipping through the trees in a way that sounded almost like a warning. The oak's gnarled branches, twisted and skeletal, seemed to reach out toward them, as if trying to grab hold. A section of the ground before them cracked open with a violent shudder. The earth split like the seams of a broken chest, revealing an archway made of stone, ancient runes carved deep into its surface, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. The air around the arch crackled with energy, sending a chill down their spines. "Is this it?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling as her breath turned to mist in the freezing air. Ella stepped forward, her fingers trembling as they traced the runes. The stone was cold, unyielding, and the symbols seemed to pulse under her touch, their grooves almost alive. It felt as if the runes were beckoning her, whispering promises she couldn't understand. As she traced them further, a strange metallic scent filled the air, thick and sharp, like blood mingled with ozone. She pulled her hand back, her heart racing. "Do you smell that?" she asked, but before anyone could answer, the ground beneath them shifted again. A shadow, dark, towering, moved through the archway, flickering like static, an unnatural shape with hollow, unblinking eyes. It was there and gone in a blink, like a fleeting thought, but the effect it had on them was immediate. A cold fear crawled up their spines. "Do you see that?" Dane gasped, his voice strained and small. "I don't know if I want to," Sarah mumbled, gripping Ella's arm tightly. Before they could decide whether to run or turn back, the archway began to glow brighter. The stones hummed with a low, vibrating sound, and the air became thick, almost suffocating. The light intensified, pulling them in, and the world around them began to warp and twist. Time, once so steady, seemed to lose its meaning. The trio found themselves sucked into the doorway, their surroundings distorting in ways that defied comprehension. Suddenly, they were no longer standing in the woods. The forest had disappeared, replaced by a cavern of crystalline pillars. These towering structures hummed with an otherworldly energy, casting beams of refracted light across the cavern, illuminating the darkness. But the shadows, those strange, elusive shadows, moved. They seemed to stretch and writhe on the walls, almost alive, as though they were watching the trio, waiting. Ella, Dane, and Sarah stumbled forward, disoriented, the air growing heavier with each step. Their hearts pounded in their chests, as if their bodies knew that something unspeakable was lurking in the darkness. The shadows twisted and shifted, creeping closer, making it impossible to tell where they ended, and the darkness began. Then, a deep voice echoed from the depths of the cavern, so soft it was almost a whisper, but its weight was undeniable. It reverberated through their bones, sending a shiver of dread down their spines. Only those who confess will find the way back. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, no one moved. Ella looked at her friends, her mind racing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The room felt alive in ways that made her skin crawl. The shadows, now more distinct, closed in on them like a slow-moving tide, and the temperature seemed to plummet further. What does that mean? Sarah breathed, her voice breaking as she looked around, as if expecting the walls to swallow them whole. Ella felt a sudden compulsion, an unexplainable need to move forward. It wasn't just fear. It was something darker, something that told her that to survive, they would have to confront whatever was hidden deep within their own hearts. She stepped forward, the silence deafening now. Every footstep echoed in the cavern like a drumbeat, and the shadows seemed to grow stronger, feeding on the fear that radiated from them. The cavern, once so vast, now felt suffocating. Ella knew, deep down, that the only way out was to confront whatever this place had brought them here to face. The voice had spoken of confession, and for the first time, Ella understood the weight of the words. To leave, they would have to confess their darkest fears, their deepest regrets. The problem was, what if that was exactly what the shadows wanted? Ella's hand trembled as it hovered just above the talisman. The weight of the moment was unbearable. Every second felt like an eternity. She could feel her heart racing, and the oppressive atmosphere seemed to close in on her from all sides. The reflection of Sarah, now more monstrous than ever, snarled, "You think that trinket can save you? No one leaves the Solstice door, not without paying the price." Ella swallowed hard, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She could hear the pounding of her own heartbeat echoing in her ears, drowning out the whispers that seemed to come from every direction. The figures in the crystals writhed in agony, their faces contorted in expressions of pain and betrayal. Dane's reflection loomed larger, stepping out of the shadows. "We're all here because of you, Ella. You were the one who led us here. And now it's too late. Too late to turn back." Ella's mind raced. She couldn't deny the truth of their words. The guilt she'd carried for so long, the time she'd abandoned her brother when he needed her most, the lies she had told to protect herself, flooded her. And now, it seemed she was paying for them. The ground beneath them began to tremble once more, and the air thickened. The talisman in Ella's hand burned with an intense heat, pulling her closer to the crystal pillar. Shadows swirled around her, drawing her in like a vortex, threatening to swallow her whole. Sarah's voice echoed in the distance, a hollow scream. "Ella, don't give in. Don't let it take you." But the shadows were relentless, their pull unbearable. Ella could see her friends, distorted, trapped, becoming part of the darkness, their faces twisted in agony. A deep, guttural voice rumbled through the chamber. "Confession is the only way to break the cycle. You must face your darkest sins, or you will remain here, trapped for eternity." Ella's legs felt like lead. She wanted to run, but the shadows were everywhere. Her reflection, now almost unrecognizable, stepped forward, its eyes full of sorrow. "You can't escape. Not this time." Tears welled in Ella's eyes, but she knew deep down that there was no escape. She had to face the truth. She had to confess. Only then could the door to freedom open. And so, Ella whispered, her voice barely audible, "I'm sorry. I failed you all. I abandoned him. I didn't save him." The moment the words left her mouth, the room fell silent. The shadows paused, the air stilled, and the crystal pillars dimmed. As the first light of dawn slowly bowled into the sky, casting soft golden rays over the ancient oak, Ella, Dane, and Sarah stood motionless. The forest, which had felt alive with ominous energy only hours before, was now eerily still. The shadows that had chased them through the depths of their darkest fears had vanished. At least, that's what they thought. The talisman Ella held in her hand was now dull, its strange glow extinguished. Its warmth was gone, and with it, the oppressive weight of the chamber's dark influence. The air was lighter, the chill of the night lifting. But as the trio gazed at the oak tree, the symbol of their redemption, Ella couldn't shake the feeling that something remained unresolved. Dane dropped to his knees, the burden of his confession weighing him down. I should have saved her. I should have faced it. But I ran. And now, here we are, bound by our lies. Sarah kneeled beside him, her voice filled with regret. None of us are innocent, Dane. But we've faced the truth, and maybe that's enough to break the cycle. Ella's eyes shifted to the sky, her heart still racing. She had apologized to herself, confronting the fear that had paralyzed her in the past. But something about this moment, the eerie stillness, the quiet of the forest, felt too quiet. She looked back at the oak tree, her fingers tightening around the talisman. There had to be more. And then, the ground trembled slightly beneath them. A distant rustling in the trees caught their attention. The sound was too familiar, too unsettling. They turned, only to see a shadow moving at the edge of the clearing. A figure. Not a ghost, not an apparition, but a living presence, standing just out of reach. Familiar in form, yet distant and strange. Ella's breath caught in her throat. Is that? The figure, like a mirror to their past, stood motionless. Its outline was too clear, its features too recognizable. It was a reflection of the past they thought they had escaped. Their guilt, their unspoken regrets, manifested once again. The figure slowly stepped forward, its gaze fixed on them. As it drew nearer, the air grew heavier, thick with unspoken words and forgotten memories. And then, in a voice that seemed to echo from every corner of the forest, the figure spoke. You cannot escape me. Not now. Not ever. The shadows are within you. And always will be. Ella's heart skipped a beat. She could feel it. Feel the weight of the truth pressing down on her. Their confession had freed them from the curse of the chamber. But the shadows were never just external. They were inside them all along. Dane stood, trembling but resolute. We've faced our fears. We've confessed. We're not running anymore. The figure's form shifted, its features warping like a mirage. It flickered, its presence fading in and out of existence, a shadow in the corners of their vision. But the words, those haunting words, stayed with them. You may have confessed, but the truth has no end. There will always be more to confront, more to face. And when the time comes again, you'll be here, like all the others. With a final, deafening silence, the figure disappeared into the mist, vanishing as quickly as it had come. The three friends stood frozen, the weight of those words lingering in the air. Had they truly escaped? Had they broken free from the shadows? Or was this just the beginning of something darker? Ella felt a strange calm wash over her. The talisman in her hand had no answers, no magic left to offer. The forest was silent once again, but the truth of their journey, the painful confessions, the confronting of their deepest fears, remained carved into their souls. As they turned to leave the clearing, the forest around them felt different. Not safer, not more peaceful, just different. They had stepped through the door, crossed the threshold of their darkest selves, and now the forest seemed to watch them, as if waiting for the next chapter to begin. The village of Eldermore would remember this night. It would remember the three friends who had dared to face the shadows. And though the door to the chamber was closed, the echoes of that night would never truly fade. For in the end, the shadows were always waiting. And the truth, however terrifying, was never truly gone. Lesson. The story revolves around three characters, Ella, Dane, and Sarah, who must confront their past mistakes and fears when they enter a mysterious world. Through their journey, they learn essential lessons about the power of truth, facing their guilt, and the ongoing process of redemption. Here's a breakdown of the key lessons. True change happens when we face our guilt and fears head-on. Avoiding them only strengthens their hold on us. Each character confesses their mistakes. Ella admits her fear of failure. Dane acknowledges his betrayal, and Sarah apologizes for her lies. With their confessions, the supernatural forces lose their power, and the characters are freed from the chamber. Confessing the truth, no matter how painful, is the first step toward healing and redemption. At the end, the characters return to the oak tree, seemingly free, but they are reminded that redemption isn't final. The shadows they faced are within them, constantly reminding them of their mistakes. Redemption is an ongoing journey. Redemption is not an endpoint. We must continue to confront our mistakes and grow from them. The journey teaches us that redemption isn't a one-time event, but a continuous cycle of facing our flaws, learning from them, and striving to be better. Personal growth comes from constantly confronting our shadows and moving forward, no matter how many times we stumble. If you enjoyed this story and want more spine-tingling mysteries that will keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Don't miss out on the next part of this chilling journey. Turn on notifications so you're the first to know when our next mind-bending tale drops. Remember, the truth always finds a way to reveal itself. But are you ready for what's next?